right, so this is our last session before lunch, and it is another great panel. And because I could not get enough of Robert Rand, he's going to be back at it again. So we're going to have Robert Rand and then Denis Zlatov, the co-founder and customer success officer for JetRails. We're also going to have Jorge Gonzalez, who is the director of development of Turning Point Brands. Robert Walls, the IT manager for Zanders Sporting Goods, and Sushant Mangalore, who is the solutions architect at AWS. The panel discussion will be about how modern and flexible infrastructure improves e-commerce outcomes. So I will hand it off to Robert.
Well, while everybody's getting situated, I'll tell you a little bit more about our panelists. So Denis has been working in the space, was co-founder of eBound Host, which later led to the founding of JetRails as a brand and as our flagship, and has been in the web hosting space since the year 2000. So a lot of history there. Jorge, he's been in IT and an internet professional for over 20 years, and oversees a variety of B2B and B2C e-commerce initiatives across a variety of Magento instances. Rob Walls at Zanders has been an IT leader for over a decade and in the field for over 15 years. And Sushant at AWS is built a career around being able to really engineer the right solutions for the right situations, bringing cloud-native solutions, to different needs in the tech space. And so really, I brought a bunch of heavy hitters up here, and they're going to give me a run for my money. So let's start here. We've got Jorge. You're closest. You're going to. Let's start up. Your team has been acquiring a lot of different e-commerce businesses through the years. What challenges has that introduced for you? Is that, and I imagine that sometimes they're on different platforms, that they have different traffic, different needs. How have you really tackled that? How do you see that in terms of being able to have a cohesive experience for end users and for overall for the business?
Yeah, it definitely brings on a bunch of complex problems. One of the biggest problems we have is integrating systems. How do we consolidate systems without impacting the customer experience? Parts of that are fulfillment. How do we integrate different systems, new systems with our ERPs? Because of customer experience has to be a number one priority for the company. How do we transition the inventory? So if you buy a company out of Minnesota and you're shipping out of California, how do you transition that inventory? And then the services, right? So when you're buying these companies, these e-commerce companies, you're acquiring a lot of services. And so you've got to really take a knife to what you need and what you don't need and identify those pretty quickly. Your risks and your threats are very important, especially when you deal with Magento. You need to identify them quickly and discover the vulnerabilities and the infrastructure weaknesses. And then most importantly, the people. How do the people mesh together? How do the workflows mesh together? And getting everyone on the same page. Those are very important.
Interesting. And I know that you've built some custom solutions above and beyond, using Magento and using a variety of SaaS solutions. When you look at those kinds of opportunities, obviously sometimes there's, significantly, there would be some technical debt that comes along with that. What goes into that thought process of building something that you're going to have in your own infrastructure that you're going to maintain versus looking at SaaS solutions that are out there and other systems?
I mean, it's important to recognize that not every SaaS solution is going to fit your needs. Magento gives you the flexibility to kind of develop what you need. And it was really important for us, especially when we looked at taxes, because in a consumer product company such as ourselves, we had above and beyond sales tax. So that was we had to kind of develop our own solution because SaaS solutions will not always move at your pace, and you have to move very quickly. So SaaS doesn't always work for everybody.
And speaking of things working and not working, Denis, I know that in the case of Turning Point Brands, some of the brands in their portfolio see some major traffic spikes. See real surges in demand. Both traffic and orders. What goes on when those spikes are happening? How is it that a brand that does have a lot of uniqueness built into their websites and such, how is it that continues to perform well?
Well, Magento's flexible, as we all know. Infrastructure needs to be as flexible. When you're dealing with a high traffic site, especially when you're dealing with a campaign that is sent via, let's say, SMS, which we have noticed, traffic that comes in through SMS comes in a lot faster rate than from an email campaign. We're all used to receiving an SMS, clicking a link, and there you go. If you get 600,000 SMS messages sent out, you get about 500,000 visitors coming to the website in the next few minutes. The key here is to create an auto-scaling policy that is flexible enough to account for this traffic. It's essentially comes to sizing. You're using the right families of instances. You're warming enough instances to absorb the traffic, and that gives you success.
Awesome. Rob, I know that your team in particular in the last few years has had different e-commerce challenges and really some growth spurts that you've experienced by getting over some hurdles. Can you talk a little bit about what the Zanders team has experienced in terms of e-commerce growth as it relates to bottlenecks and surpassing those?
Yeah, so Zanders really is the use case that everybody kind of talks about with Magento. We were that small business, adopted Magento, actually started it in-house on an on-prem server, which obviously did not have the bandwidth nor the resources that we needed, so we had to pivot to the cloud. We bounced through Hostway and Rackspace and realized we had some real hurdles that we had to overcome. Those being in particular our front page loading times and our search times were just really slow. We also had some caching issues, reliability issues as well, with sites staying up. And we really couldn't meet the peak demand like we needed to. So we ended up partnering with CSS Commerce to help us out with this and also to spearhead our update from an earlier version of Magento to the newest version of Magento to stay on the security side and also reap the new benefits of that new upgrade. Also, we were able to parlay to JetRails as a new hosting provider, which with AWS on the back end actually allowed us to tidy up a lot of those issues.
And just off the top of your head, I know I've seen some stats in a case study. What kind of a bottom line impact did alleviating some of those pain points really have on the business? Both on maybe a personal level, but also the bottom line.
Well, personal level, it was very evident at first that we had issues, and with the assistance of both AWS and JetRails, we were able to actually start to utilize the auto-scaling features of AWS to really help us out during those peak times, which was nice, and then it would also be able to scale back down during those times of idle traffic, which was very helpful. Our front page loading times were anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, which is completely not acceptable. But in combination of CSS Commerce and JetRails and the AWS platform, we were able to significantly lower those, and we also added Amnesty Elasticsearch in there to help out as well, and it really made my life a lot easier.
Yeah. And Denis, can you speak to some of the infrastructure that was used there, what that environment looks like? Because obviously, there's a lot here that with stacks, technology like AWS, that these are available to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zanders, it's actually a pretty standard single-tenant environment that we deploy. There is Cloudflare at the front. We have a pretty active Cloudflare relationship, actually. we apply like it's a battle-tested configuration for Cloudflare. On the AWS side, there is a self-healing auto-scaling layer, of course, with EC2. We utilize RDS for SQL, obviously redundant. Same goes for Redis. We use Elasticache and Elasticsearch. Specifically with Zanders, there is a unique need that a lot of orders come in with a lot of SKU numbers. So we had to get a little bit creative to account for that. So the Elasticache layer is running slightly higher than a normal deployment, let's say. Also, the search feature, as you mentioned, is quite active. Also, so there are more data nodes than master nodes actually, with redundancy of odd number.
Yeah, and obviously the tech stack is at the heart of everything working right. That have infrastructure is infrastructure. That you have to have the right hardware, the right configurations. But we all know, I think, in this room, things still go wrong. That there are DDoS attacks happening. There are bugs. There are things that crop up. What the way that you would look at it? How do you make sure that a merchant doesn't have that kind of bad day where not that something can't go wrong, but that it's going to really ruin their month?
So the key is to sleep well at night. The key here is to have redundancies in place, right? So for example, the EC2 layer, the auto-scaling layer, all of the nodes are they're disposable, right? So they come in and out sometimes as frequently as like a few minutes a lifetime on a node, and it happens completely automatically, completely seamlessly. When it comes to SQL, so there's we always deploy with multiple nodes for a reader and a writer, with automatic failover in case of a failure on the primary node. With Elasticache that we already touched, there are a few nodes that support all of the caching for Redis and Elasticsearch. I think another note that I would like to bring up is we deploy in multiple availability zones. So let's say, there are two SQL nodes, right? A reader and a writer. So if the writer is in availability zone A, the reader would be in zone B. If there is 4 web nodes running on the base level, all of them will be in different availability zones to account for infrequent AWS failures.
So, really, I guess it's about, cutting, measuring twice and cutting once. It's about, thinking ahead about what's going to go wrong. And, Sushant, rather than ask you about things going wrong, maybe I ask you a little bit about things going right. We know that AWS is always, at the cutting edge of new innovation, and right now we're doing things like deploying Graviton 2, increasing performance, decreasing cost for clients. Can you tell us a little bit about how AWS is looking at, not only AWS's growth, but helping e-commerce merchants and similar users to really hit their KPIs and see a better bottom line?
Right. So AWS always has customer focus. So we don't look at competition so much as we look at what our customers are asking for. So along with all the things that Denis mentioned about reliability, scalability, we're looking for newer ways for our customers to adopt our platform. So Graviton was one innovation in that space where ARM chips or ARM technology has been around for years, but it was a really untapped market. And then it started to make its way into mobile devices. But then there was a lot of opportunity in bringing it into mainstream regular compute space. And that's where Graviton 2 became an innovation that we are very proud of. And it's something that differentiates us from a lot of other vendors in the market. And it provides, like you said, better performance at lower costs. And in addition to that, it also consumes less power. So because everybody in the industry today is also concerned about the sustainability and the environmental impact of technology, So that's another place where Graviton 2 plays a very important part.
Yeah, and I know that your team, AWS has been working to help businesses even understand what their environmental impacts look like, that what that usage looks like. So I think that, going forward, that there are a lot of brands out there that, their customers care. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's particularly interesting just seeing how those things fit together, not only having the tech, but being able to report on it. Denis, I know that as we've been deploying specifically Graviton 2, we've been seeing some pretty, very measurable results. Off the top of your head, can you speak to any of the specifics of the benefits that we're seeing of upgrading?
Yes, of course. So Graviton in general, we see for EC2 layer, we see about 20% cost reduction versus Intel with managed services like RDS, Elastic Cache, and Elasticsearch. Approximately 12%. Overall, we see about 15 on average across the entire platform. Additionally, for EC2 layer, Graviton makes an elastic platform actually more elastic, simply because the instances initialize a lot faster. It's not uncommon to see in our deployments that the platform goes from 4 instances to 9, from 9 to 17 instances within a minute or 2. It's a lot faster. It's visibly faster than Intel.
And George, I'm going to pull it back from maybe some of the hardcore Magento hosting at the heart of things, and I know that you've built some interesting things over time using different queuing services. Obviously, Magento includes RabbitMQ as a native integration now. You've used some of Amazon, some of AWS's queuing services. How do you look at integrating tech stacks like that? What, obviously there are various API endpoints to use with different systems and other things. Why go back to the infrastructure and add on these additional services?
I think it's because we had to take an agnostic approach, right? So when we started acquiring companies, we had Magento 1, Magento 2, we had Solomon, we had Microsoft Nav, we had all these different pieces, and they couldn't connect and they couldn't talk to each other. So we looked at Amazon SQS to really bring all those together. Because we were on Magento, we could build a custom solution that could talk to these individual systems. And it was really powerful for us. One of the most important things was interface when we talk about Amazon SQS, because I had different people in different departments, different teams interface, interacting with it. So that was really important for us. And it also allows individual components to fail outside of each other. So it was a really good fit for us when it comes to Amazon SQS.
Interesting. And speaking of other systems, Rob, I know that the team at CSS Commerce has helped your team with a product information management system, a PIM, which you also wound up selecting an open source solution that also gets hosted, in your infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of that and choosing an open source solution to sit side by side, and why have that in addition to Magento?
Yeah, certainly. We were in the market for a PIM, preferably open source, something that was able to really integrate easily and seamlessly with our ERP, which is slightly proprietary. So that had the capability of doing so. CSS Commerce was able to help us get that into play, and it's really a great place for our ERP to upload all of the data, to have a central repository for all of our digital assets, our descriptions, and all the inventory feeds. So it really allowed it to come together and has significantly improved our overall quality on our website.
Interesting. Sushant, I'm going to throw you the last question because I'm sure I'm probably starting to run out of time. But a lot of e-commerce merchants, they're going to AWS for hosting. It's a destination at this point. Do you have thoughts on some of the different opportunities there? Do you see it as difficult to self-manage, or if somebody's calling AWS and saying, I want to host a Magento website, Do you have advice for what kind of resources AWS can provide, or how to best bridge that gap? Because obviously, as we were hearing from Denis, there's a lot of different tech in the stack, and if you want to do it well, you want to be performant, like anything, just like learning Magento, there's certainly a curve. So how would you look at that?
Right. So our objective is to provide all customers, not just e-commerce, but everybody in the industry with a platform to host their software. And in doing that, we have built over 200 services. And it's not easy for everybody to be good at adopting all of these services without doing a lot of initial research and things like that. So to that end, we have documentation, we have white papers and things like that, which helps you get started. But having the experience of actually having built the platform or built on the platform comes from working with partners such as JetRails, and there are many others in the ecosystem who have done this for many customers over and over and successfully. So working with partners is a quick way of getting your foot in the door with AWS, where you know that a trusted partner can give you the right guidance. The AWS team is always there to listen to you and help you, but partners are a scaling mechanism for AWS, where somebody like me, I can talk to only so many customers in a day, but when there are thousands and thousands of customers wanting to use the AWS platform, partners like JetRails help us scale by providing hands-on keyboard experience to our customers and bringing in the knowledge of implementing solutions successfully on the platform to our customers. And that way, it becomes easier for them to adopt our platform, and it's easier for them to tap into experience of our trusted partners like JetRails.
Well, if you're ever thinking of being somewhere other than AWS, we've we've got a home. But I think for me, it's interesting because it's the ecosystem has evolved in such a way that it's much like dealing with the way I think Adobe would talk about their SIs and about companies that have built Magento site after Magento site and know the ins and outs and know so much about best practice that there are a tremendous number of AWS partners. So very interesting to see the infrastructure provider follow a very similar path toward partnership. I'd love to open it up if there are any questions. I know that we've tackled a lot of different nuances up here today. Anything in particular coming to anybody's mind? No, I think our panelists are going to get away pretty easy today. We'll be available after, so if anybody wants to have any kind of a one-on-one. But I really want to thank everybody for flying out. Everybody came a big distance today, and to everybody that came out to meet Magento New York today. I mean, it is phenomenal to be together with the community. So thank you to Marcia and the Krish team that have made this happen, the Magento Association, and all the sponsors and everyone that's made this the amazing day that it's already been. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.